Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Juliet Howie.
Good morning, GBTAers. How are you feeling today? Day 2? Feeling good? I hope you enjoyed our Oakwood-sponsored welcome reception last night. Thank you. By the way, I'm back on stage, as you can tell, for those of you I missed yesterday. For those that heard me yesterday, well, please join my journey again. You can sing along. So, please close your eyes. Imagine you have arrived in LA. You can feel the warm sun on your face and the gentle sea breeze from the Pacific Ocean. Hear the swaying of the palm trees. Can you feel it? Congratulations. You have just arrived outside your Oakwood apartment. Open your eyes. You have 1 hour before meeting your work colleagues at James's Beach Bar, and you are very tired from your long flight. Not to worry, you were smart. You booked an apartment through Oakwood Worldwide, which means you can quickly open your apartment door, no long queues at reception, log on to your personal Wi-Fi code, enjoy instant fresh coffee from the machine, and finally stretch out in the space. Yes, space. Flexibility and convenience is what you get when you book a serviced apartment. At Oakwood Worldwide, we offer end-to-end apartment solutions through our own branded properties or through our global network of partners. Therefore, take hold of the momentum, join us on a journey, and choose Oakwood Worldwide Corporate Apartment Solutions for all your extended stays. Myself and team members, Emma and Tim, who are here somewhere, we would love to speak with you this week, so please come and find us, and please now enjoy our video. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to center stage from GBTA Amanda Cecil and from BCD Travel, Torsten Kriet.
Good morning, everyone. I would first like to start by saying how grateful GBTA is for the continued support of the BCD Travel team for these two very important benchmarking tools. Today, we're going to be talking about the Managed Travel Index and the Sustainability Self-Assessment Tool. Again, we sincerely, Torsten, appreciate your support of these important industry resources. So you may be asking yourself, why would you dedicate the time to complete the benchmarking tools? I want to make this very simple for you. Here are the benefits of benchmarking. Benchmarking will allow you to uncover some similarities between you and like-minded companies. You also can learn about best practices, and you can receive customized recommendations from our tools that will improve your travel programs. It also will generate discussions on success stories, on things you're doing well, and also identify gaps on things you can do better. And I want to put a quick plug in that if you complete the tools and you are a global travel professional, you'll receive 2 continuing education credits. I'm now going to pass it over to Torsten, and he's going to talk about these tools.
Thank you, Amanda. And good morning, everyone. So I have to, of course, say that even though BC Travel has helped, clearly the volunteers, as always, with GBTA's brilliant resources, have put all the energy and effort into this. So it's a true benchmarking tool based on peer review, thought leadership, and it's something that obviously is important for all of you that know that if you want to stay healthy and maintain your good health and you go to a yearly checkup, that's what this is all about. So it's not you do it once and, oh, 4 years ago I've done something. It's a matter of keeping up with the changes, keeping up with the fundamental principles, and keeping up with, frankly, what is the market standard in business travel management. So the good news with GBTA is, of course, that we're looking at travel management comprehensively, holistically, and we touch in those toolkits about all the various different components that matter in a managed travel program. So you can see on the screen, it ranges from travel policy through technology, expense management, the whole lot end to end. And we also have the sustainability toolkit that Amanda mentioned already, where we dig and zoom into the actual sustainability of business travel as well. So what we've seen in the findings so far is that A, we have quite a good representation across all the different regions. We have companies of all sizes and shapes and industries joining in. And we've seen, as a couple of highlights, that technology is already immersive. No news here. We don't zoom into artificial intelligence or blockchain or anything like that. It's all about the fundamentals of business travel. So if you look into, as an example, online booking tools, 90% of you, or actually more than that, use one. No surprise here. On the expense side, it's frankly less. It's 80% at the moment, which is surprising, especially when you know that expense management tools are not even then established in one company in all different business units. And most surprisingly, from a virtual collaboration perspective, at least in your realm, hardly more than a quarter of you are actually responsible for virtual meetings and how that might fit into a travel program. So there's a gap that we, as an industry, I think, can close.
Absolutely.
When we look into other areas around sustainability, that's another gap, frankly. Interestingly, from the company's perspective that have participated, there are many sustainability programs in place. More than 50% of you guys have that. Good news. Bad news is the reflection in the travel program is hardly visible. So there's a real gap, especially when we look into the environmental impact that, at least here in Europe, we believe exists. We need to make sure that obviously we really look into what can we do as an industry to help keeping our programs sustainable from an environmental but also social responsibility perspective. That's what the sustainability toolkit is all about. So to close out, 3 action points. 1, there's a wonderful sustainability session later on today, so go visit that. Tonight, before you go out or after, depending on how good your results want to be, log on to the Hub, GBTA website, and start completing your form. It's time for your annual checkup. And thirdly, tomorrow there's a Knowledge Bazaar. You can find me in the BC Travel booth. There's no selling going on, and the good news is once you filled in this profile, there's also no one calling you up and have any sales proposals after that. So it's just for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Matthew Ziski.
Good morning. We announced in September that we now have 700,000 companies traveling with Airbnb for work. Since 2005, we've taken steps on focusing on the business travel market, ranging from categorizing homes that we think travelers would like, to growing our teams globally to increase presence in the market, and finally to integrate with TMCs and duty of care providers. Up until this point, we had really only focused on transient business travel, but we realized that only 25% of employees travel for work. And this led us to wonder, how can we provide solutions for the entire company, not just part of it? We see that keeping employees engaged at work is a huge, huge problem. About 4 in every 5 HR and business leaders think they have a retention and engagement problem in the workplace. Here is what we know about organizations with engaged employees. They make 2.5 times more revenue than their competition. Their employees are 57% more engaged and effective. And finally, they're 87% less likely to leave. 87%. This is why we're excited to be offering team-building experience for companies. Experiences are excursions or activities designed and led by local hosts on Airbnb. All experiences can range from workshops to long treks and are available for various skills and interests. Outside of these experiences, we've also started to look at ways we could help our teams grow and collaborate. Gallup reported that workers who spend 60 to 80% of their time away from the office had the highest rates of engagement in the workplace. This is why we're also starting to look into offering listings on Airbnb for meetings and offsites. Giving your employees a place to think creatively outside of their everyday office can inspire your teams to do the best work. Finally, if you've ever had to relocate to a new city, especially internationally, the transition can be very difficult on your personal life. Finding a new neighborhood to live in, a new routine, or new schools to place your kids in are some of the most challenging issues that transferees face. In fact, challenges to adapting to a new community account for 40% of failed international assignments. We feel that Airbnb is well suited to help transferees find the right neighborhoods for them, and this is why we're also expanding into relocations for employees. In closing, we'd like to share a brief video on Airbnb for Work.
Any other questions? Let's do lunch.
Out towards the tool. Who we got? Boss man?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to center stage from Digital Drums, Steve Dunn.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I have to say it's a great honor to be with you this morning at the GBTA European Conference. Now, the session I'm going to be moderating this morning has the title, The 2020 Vision on Aviation, in which 3 of the leaders of the sector will share their thoughts on the future of aviation for 2020 and beyond. And that's not an easy thing to do, for while aviation has always been one of the most innovative, fast-moving industries in the commercial world, I think it's fair to say it's almost one of the most difficult to predict for analysts, commentators, the media, and aviation professionals themselves. It's an industry that's always been buffeted and challenged by different elements, be it straightforward economics or the often dramatic fluctuations of global oil prices, be it the geopolitical landscape or the ever-growing regulatory pressures. There is technology, environmental pressures, mergers, acquisitions, distribution models, and a more demanding traveller all at play in the landscape against which airline brands have to operate. And IATA, who has predicted that by 2030, the number of passengers flying globally will have doubled, have said that the global aviation infrastructure may not be in a position to cope with that type of increase. So predicting the future of aviation for 2020 and beyond is in itself quite a big challenge, and understanding what the leaders of the sector are doing today to meet those future challenges is vitally important to all of us in this room today. So I'm going to be joined by three of the leaders of the sector who are going to take us through their views of what the future may look like and how they think the industry is going to cope with that and get there. Now, we were to be joined, I have to say, by Harry Hoymeister of Lufthansa, but Harry has been unable to make it this morning. And so Heike Berlenbach, the Senior VP for Sales for Lufthansa Group, has very kindly agreed to step in. Heike, as I said, is the Senior Vice President for Sales for Lufthansa Group and CCO of HAP Frankfurt. We're also going to be joined by Juha Juravan, Chief Commercial Officer for Finnair, a role he's held since 2014, having been with the airline since 2012. And finally, we have Shai Weiss, who's Executive Vice President and Chief Commercial Officer and incoming Virgin Atlantic CEO, a role he takes up on the 1st of January 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your panel for this morning. Well, good morning and thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking about 2020 and beyond, the vision that aviation has. And I guess we really have to start with something that might be of most impact to all of us here in the room, which of course is Brexit. Last weekend we saw the 27 nations of the EU do an agreement with the UK. And we all know that that now has to be rubber stamped by the Houses of Parliament and the Commons back at the UK. And the word on the street and everywhere else is that that is possibly not going to happen. So we could be faced with a chaotic and hard Brexit come the end of March next year. Now, Shai, I know you were with the Prime Minister on Monday when she was selling you this particular deal. What's your take? What will happen if there is a chaotic and hard Brexit for aviation?
Thanks for starting the breakfast session with such an emotional topic. So first of all, good morning to everyone. So from our perspective, first of all, she did an excellent job of explaining the deal she had struck with the European Union again on the weekend. And when you said rubber stamp, I would say it's the reverse of rubber stamping. There's going to be some robust debate at the House of Commons towards a vote on December the 11th to ratify this agreement. From Virgin Atlantic perspective, we've actually written to the Select Committee on Transportation saying that it really is for the Parliament to discuss and ratify any agreement, but from our perspective, a hard Brexit is really harmful to the UK economy and to consumers. So we're very much promoting a deal rather than a hard Brexit. And the one thing I've seen from the Prime Minister and others around her is I would not put it beyond her to be as resilient as she can towards that date. And she's been very, very consistent in pulling rabbits out of a hat.
Yeah, very much so. So, Juha, are you ready for a hard Brexit? Is Finnair getting ready for it?
Well, Finnair is preparing for all possible scenarios. UK is one of our most important markets in Europe. So, of course, we're preparing. But at the same time, we are still confident there will be a sensible outcome at the end of the day for aviation. But let's wait and see. But we need to be prepared for all scenarios.
Okay. Heike, how does an airline such as yourself prepare for possible chaos in the future given Brexit?
All Lufthansa Group companies are doing a kind of a risk assessment in order to evaluate what are the biggest risks and how could we mitigate those ones. And for us, certainly air traffic and the traffic rights as such are the biggest risk for us, supply chain management and also border control. So we are getting prepared, but we also hope for a smooth transition towards 2020. We have about 700 weekly frequencies between the UK and mainland Europe, and we've planned our schedule for next year, and we are confident that there is still a possible positive outcome.
So, Shai, are you actually sitting there planning for a hard Brexit? Have you got a plan in place?
We have a plan for all eventualities. Our current plan is, of course, for a transition, so a deal between the European Union and the UK. It would be foolish not to have a plan B, which is what happens if there is a hard Brexit. I would say for Virgin Atlantic, we're in a slightly different situation because we only fly long haul and actually don't fly to Europe. So in that regard, the impact we're looking at is what would happen if the UK economy actually declined, and what would happen if the currency, if the pound really weakened, given our exposure to just demand in the UK, which could be softer if the currency was so weak.
Yeah,
but
that is the problem, isn't it? Yeah, the whole currency thing.
It is.
So let's move on from Brexit, because we could bog ourselves down in that all day. Let's talk about something that, if Brexit wasn't around, probably would be the next big thing. It's certainly the biggest discussion point in business travel, which is NDC, of course. Ewan, give us a view from an airline's perspective of why NDC will be good for the business traveller and the corporate buyer.
I think the key for us is actually what do we offer to the customer at the end of the day. I mean, then we find the technology how to distribute that. And I think it's important that we don't only talk about technology. The reason why airlines have to evaluate different alternatives is because we are not able today to offer the full product range that we have. And that is the reason why we need to find a technology which is able to do it. And currently NDC is giving us that opportunity. And of course we see how GDS systems will develop. Many of the current GDS providers are coming up with new NDC solutions as well. So whatever the name of the technology is actually secondary. What we want is that we need to have the full product suite out for the consumer to choose, because that's what the business traveler and the leisure traveler would need. I think the name of the technology is secondary. But of course, we do acknowledge that it has an impact on the business travel agents, and we want to work with them, of course, to make sure that it's as smooth as possible.
Okay. Now, Heike, I first read about NDC way back in 2013, and I've still got the article that said by the end of 2016, all distribution would be via NDC. Here we are in 2018, and IATA is now saying it's going to be 20 airlines. In fact, I think it's 21 airlines doing 20% of their business by 2020. First of all, is that achievable, given that they said by the end of 2016 it'd be everywhere? And secondly, where's Lufthansa on NDC?
Well, as you know, and probably the audience also knows, that Lufthansa Group is really pushing hard for NDC. And what was already said, it's for the sake of the customers, for the individualized needs. We believe NDC is the answer, can be the technological foundation for it. So therefore, we definitely go for it. I believe it is still possible, talking about the Lufthansa Group airlines, to achieve that goal. We have about 2,000 agents already connected on a direct connect basis. We have about 40 even more technology providers. And what we also do, we believe even if there's no technological solution in place for everybody, we also collaborate with our trade partners, and we would like to walk down that road jointly.
Okay. Now, Shai, I saw the IATA leader list there, and both Finnair and Lufthansa are very prominent on that. Almost conspicuous by their absence, of course, is Virgin Atlantic. So why aren't you on the leader list?
Well, we've got a solution for that. You know that Juha is joining Virgin Atlantic.
Yes. All right. He's bringing NDC
He's going to bring it with him. In all seriousness, you know, look, first of all, in the last GBTA in San Diego, we announced we're the first provider of 18.1. On the standards, the launch was very much focused on the consumer side, and then we will be announcing more things to do on the B2B side of things. And as always, you note that we're not in the alliance, in any alliance either. So we tend to be more diplomatic in that way. But in this regard, I think we're going to evaluate our position and take a position, possibly enter.
Okay. Let's move on a little bit, because we are tight for time. And I did refer in my introduction to the IATA report about the growth of the aviation sector doubling by 2030, and then saying that they didn't think the aviation infrastructure was in place to be able to deal with that. Heike, what's your view on that? First of all, do you think it will double? And what is the aviation industry doing to cope with this doubling of passenger numbers?
Well, according to Eurocontrol figures for European air traffic, it's supposed to grow by 53%, so not as much as the worldwide growth. However, if we look at the air traffic structure right now, we have already a problem today, even without having those figures. So therefore, we are pushing hard for a collaboration of politics, the airports and the airlines, because there's a lot that needs to be done in order to have an appropriate servicing offer from the airlines, from our side, towards our customers. It's certainly not acceptable, the status quo that we have, and there's still a lot that needs to be done. And we try to play that on very different levels, lobbying in Berlin, lobbying in Brussels, together with other airlines that in other fields eventually are our competitors. But in that respect, we are really jointly marching forward in order to talk about these topics. And we believe we need healthy growth, and healthy growth in the airline means that all different levels need to be aligned. So we need to have a good infrastructure on the ground. That also includes border control, security. By the way, security in Germany is very inefficient. We pay a lot of money out of an airline perspective, but if we look at the passenger goes through the security, it's only 80 to 100 by average per hour. And if I compare that with the European landscape, it's about 200. So therefore, there's a lot that still needs to be done. And we believe that can only be done in a collaborative manner when we all work together.
So does Lufthansa do lots of lobbying of all the appropriate powers that be to...
Absolutely, we are doing that, and we also point out that it's not only for the in the interest of our customers on the ground when they look for a smooth servicing on the ground, which is an important part of air travel, but we also look into environmental issues. If we take now the air traffic control right now, in Europe, there is a very fragmented structure. We have so many different air traffic centers. It's 3 times as many as in the US. And we could save about 50 million tons of CO2 if we would have an efficient structure there. So we are talking about single European sky that we are really pushing forward.
Okay. Juha, what's your take on this, this growth? I know it's double globally, not so double in Europe, but I think it's about 53%, I think you said?
No, I can definitely see it maybe from an Asian perspective, which is very important for Finnair. When we look at China, for example, there's 5 to 6 million incremental new Chinese traveling out every year. There's roughly 8 new airports opening every year in China. And if we then think, where do these Chinese consumers then travel? They will have the capacity to fly out, but if Europe doesn't have the capacity to actually receive them, then they find somewhere else to go. They can easily go to Australia, they go to the United States, but then what is the position of Europe to actually take a share of that growth? Because we do need both for the trade and for the leisure income, for the tourism industry. And we are concerned, just like I said, we are concerned about the European ability to, further of all, develop the airports, grow capacity, runways. There is not really, besides Berlin, the new airport, that's really the only major airport development in Europe at the moment. Whenever it opens. October 2020, that's the latest I heard.
Very good. Shai, have you got a take on it?
Well, I mean, no better place to talk about it than the UK. We need a new airport, in this case, or a new runway, and our position has been very clear. You know, if you're going to develop hub airports, Heathrow's got to be the one. It is now the preferred solution and the solution, but it's going to take time. So we think in the meantime, of course, optimizing the usage of the airspace is necessary. There's major movement efficiencies, but the UK environment is actually constrained by infrastructure. So we need to do everything we can to get it up and running as soon as possible, and the costs not passed on to the consumers, but actually passed on to the people who are building and enjoying from the infrastructure that they build.
And the constraint must be political, mustn't it? I mean, it's the politicians and their will to get this stuff done.
I think the will now is there. There are competing interests, of course, and it's fair to say that the UK will not be building 8 new airports in 1 year. If we build 8 in 100 years, that would be a major achievement. Yes.
Yeah. Now, while I was putting some notes together for this conference, I just made the following notes. I just want to get your view on this. So Icelandair was taken over by WOW Air earlier. WOW Air was taken over earlier this month by Icelandair. The demise here in Germany of Small Planet Airlines, recent failures of Primera Air, Cobalt, VLM, Alitalia remains in administration, where it seems to have been for about a year or so. Flybe is up for sale, and we may touch on that in a second. And then Ryanair, of all carriers, Ryanair issued in October a profit warning, although you have to take that in context when it's Ryanair. My question to you all, really, is the future, given what we just talked about, the infrastructure and everything, is it a bit bleak for the future of aviation? Shai?
Consolidation, I think, is a good thing. If you look at the success and the health of the US market, a lot of it has to do with the fact that there are now 4 very large established players which have been able to consolidate and actually benefiting consumers. I think if you look at their propositions to consumers, it is far, far better. They're catching up to the European standards and, of course, the Asian standards. Yeah, I think what we're seeing is in rough times, the fragmentation of national carriers and national interests is secondary, and we need to get larger scale. It happens, by the way, through acquisitions, but also through the joint ventures which have been developed across the Atlantic to great success. American Airlines, BA, of course, Virgin Atlantic, and Delta, and soon to be with Air France KLM. So I think that's a necessary step.
Okay. Now, Heikki, Michael O'Leary very famously said that going forward, there's only going to be 5 groups of airlines, in Europe, that is. Do you agree with that, and do you think that's good for the business traveller?
Well, first of all, I also believe that consolidation is now on the move, also in Europe. It happened in the US and it will happen in Europe. For sure, the Lufthansa Group is a driver there and will certainly be one of the carriers that is looking for other kind of partnerships and will play an active role in the consolidation. However, I believe it's not going to happen the same way like in the US. There are about 200 carriers still around in the European space, so based in Europe somewhere. The top 5, we hold about 50% of the total market, which is not a lot for the top 5, and that's including the groups like Air France KLM, IAG Group, and the Lufthansa Group as well, Ryanair and EasyJet. So I believe a consolidation will go on. There will be less airlines in the future. We play an active role. However, for the corporate customer or for the customer in general, I believe that's going to be a good thing. Because what we are going to do is aligning services. We have to harmonize all the product elements that we have. That should make it easier then as well, make it transparent. Of course, there's still a long road to go. We are already working on that with our joint venture partners. And that's the way forward. And I also believe that's then our obligation as an airline to make sure that there will be a harmonization in servicing and product offers towards our customers.
So, does it endanger smaller airlines, this consolidation, in terms of their brand, their personality, their marketability, or does it strengthen it?
I fully agree with both of my colleagues here that definitely the consolidation will continue, but there is some space for certain niche carriers, but they have to have a unique selling point. And I think Finnair is one of them, which has built a very unique selling point between Europe and Asia. And it's now become one of the biggest European airlines. It's actually the biggest in Japan and one of the biggest in China. So it can be done, and profitably. But of course, it's only a few niches in Europe where you can do that. So it is a crowded space. I'm sure that the consolidation will continue. But you can survive as a niche player as well, but not everyone can.
Okay, so we're almost out of time, believe it or not. It's gone faster than a gunpowder flash. But if I could just to ask each one of you, on behalf of our audience, if there's one thing they should be watching out for 2020 and beyond in aviation, and that can be customer experience, it can be consolidation, it can be whatever. What do you think that would be? Let's start off with you, Shai.
Well, I'll give, I think, in the macro, especially for Virgin Atlantic, but also for European, we need a bit of certainty. I think businesses, no matter what the business, they can thrive under most conditions. They just need clarity. Yeah. And for us, this lack of clarity in the UK with respect to Brexit it's just taking a lot of airspace, and it shouldn't. In terms of the customer side, we continue to strive to be the most loved travel company. That's our aim. It's almost an impossible task, but nothing is impossible, we say. So for us, it's all about finding ways to delight our customers. The emergence of the A350 next year will be a very nice step in that direction.
Yep. Juha?
I would say single European sky. I think Europe has to get its act together finally to clean up the airspace and make sure that we can reduce the congestion in the air, which is completely unnecessarily created. And I think that will solve many of the issues. Also for the business traveler, so we can reduce the delays and make the whole network of airlines much more efficient.
Okay. So Heike, what's the one thing to watch out for?
I would say two things to watch out for. First is we need to make use of the technology that is there in order to have appropriate products and services towards our customers to enhance this in future. That's key. And secondly, it's the collaboration of all stakeholders.
Good. Okay, I've got 30 seconds to ask my last question. Juha, what's it like being on a panel with your future boss?
Love it.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join in appreciation for the panel, Heike, Juha, and Shai.